forward movement. Not long ago, I had a chance to sit down with the Rev'd Jason Prati, who is rector of All Saints Episcopal Church in New Albany, Ohio. We had a chance to talk about the extraordinary growth that his church has experienced, but also about what they're doing during this coronavirus crisis to continue their spiritual and numerical growth.
Good afternoon, Jason. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you holding up?
Okay, all things considered, every day is a new adventure.
That's true. It's very true.
So tell us a little about your church. What's it like?
So All Saints is a fairly young congregation. It was founded in 2000, so we're just about 20 years old. We're in a large growing suburb of Columbus, New Albany. We're a young congregation just by demographics. So our median age is probably mid to late 40s.
Wow.
We have a lot of families with young kids. New Albany is kind of a retail hub of Columbus, so there's a lot of kind of young executives in the area. And so the parish is flourishing. When I got here, our ASA was probably 160, and now it's close to 210.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, about 5 years' time. So we're growing.
So that bucks the normal trend of slow, steady decline in the Episcopal Church. Do you have some sense of why your church is growing?
I think a couple things. My parish is very geared on discipleship. When I got here, one of the first things that the congregation did as a whole was kind of mold our vision of living our discipleship with Jesus Christ around Acts 2:42. So the apostles' teaching and fellowship, breaking of the bread and prayers, those become all of our ministries circle around those four pillars. The parish is very deeply liturgical and sacramental, but also very, very engaged to outreach and to helping out the neighborhood community. This parish also likes to gel together in fellowship. So I think those three kind of areas are very, very attractive for people.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So, Acts 2:42, it always interests me that we talk about the baptismal covenant. And first of all, we often pretend like it's 5 questions and not 8, because, it's the Apostles' Creed and then all the things we say we're going to do. And we often only talk about the last 2 questions, but that the 4th question, the first behavior question, is will you be loyal to the Apostles' teaching, in the breaking of the bread and in the prayers. And it's interesting that we actually are promising to go to church and to pray. And it sounds like your people do that.
True, and catechesis and formation is huge here, Apostles' teaching. We have a very vibrant Sunday school program. We have a very vibrant adult education program. I was so disappointed because we began at the beginning of Lent this thing called the All Saints Boot Camp, where we were kind of focusing on an evening where we had evening prayer, we had Holy Eucharist, we had a common meal together. And during that meal, we had discussions. We had like a 10-week series set up. We had close to 100 and some people every Tuesday night.
Wow.
I know, right? It's incredible. Sadly, we only made it to like 4 of those, and then we've had to cancel because of the coronavirus. But yeah, the parish is really alive with kind of formation as well, too.
Do a lot of people who show up at your church, are they coming from a tradition where this kind of liturgical sacramental approach is familiar? Or do you get a lot of folks who have to kind of soak this in for the first time?
I think kind of like all Episcopal churches, we're the UN of Christianity, right? So we have the gamut from former Eastern Orthodox to Roman Catholics to, Baptists and Methodists and non-denominational. And we have quite a few adult baptisms too. So we're having people come that have zero Christian background in their life altogether.
So I want to talk about what you're doing during this time of coronavirus. But before we do that, I know the answer to this, but the people watching this video might not. You did not just step out of the sacristy wearing a cassock alb. You're wearing something else. Do you want to tell us a little about your attire and why you're wearing that?
I'm a co-founder of a brand new religious community, the Community of Mary, Mother of the Redeemer. We're only about 2 years old. I myself, with another priest and his wife, have formed this community. We're at 9 members now, mostly from this congregation who have taken first vows as well as entered the novitiate. So we're kind of a brand new community. So that's why I'm in my habit, which is a white Benedictine habit with a little Dominican flair with the rosary on the side. So I don't walk around in an owl most of the day. I mean,
and if people wanted to learn more about your community, what's the URL, or how do they do that?
Sure, we got a website. It's a cmmredeemer.org, and you can see our rule and learn more about our life there.
Awesome. And that reminds me, I should ask people, how do people learn more about All Saints Church?
So there's a couple ways. So there's our main website is www.allsaintsnewalbany.org. We also have a huge YouTube channel as well too, where you can find us on YouTube, All Saints New Albany, and then a Facebook presence as well too with All Saints New Albany. Ohio.
Right. And I know, because you and I have talked, you get a fair number of people show up at your church because somehow they find your sermons on YouTube,
right,
and decide to come hear you in person after watching you online. So that's kind of cool.
The most humbling experience was last year. I had a gentleman come in. He was basically agnostic. The Spirit started moving in him. He began searching, and he found our YouTube sermons here at All Saints.
Wow.
He began watching some of my sermons, and then he realized, oh man, this is 2 miles up the street for me. So he showed up at church, and I baptized him last year at the Easter Vigil, which was incredible. So yeah, it's neat to see how that kind of worked out.
That's cool. He was like watching Joel Osteen and you, and he's like, oh, this guy's closer. No, I'm just kidding.
I need way better hair and teeth to be like Joel Osteen.
So let's talk about, on a more serious note,
Sure.
During this time of the coronavirus, we've all had to adjust, church leaders, and you have too. So you had this Lenten program that was going. What's it been like for your church during this time of isolation?
My church doubled down, and that to me is the most exciting part. And watching what is happening. Last weekend I preached on Laetare Sunday about this event is really apocalyptic that we're experiencing, but in the full sense of the word, it's revealing. So it's really revealing what's important to us, where our discipleship with Jesus Christ is. And I was just shocked to see how the church has gone gangbusters. And I think we're so programmed in those 4 pillars: apostles, teaching, fellowship, breaking the bread, and prayers. But that's where we kind of doubled down to. So we are live streaming. We're a parish who prays the divine office quite a bit. My community is here. We kind of lead that. Before the coronavirus, we had morning prayer Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Thursday night evening prayer and Saturday evening prayer. So now we've gone to Tuesday through Friday, morning prayer. It's live streamed, and I'm watching how that community is growing. We will do live stream Eucharist on feast days as well as Sunday. And it's kind of incredible. So I know people are excited because the church is kind of more techno savvy right now. We're being forced to do, live streaming, YouTube, whatever. And I'm watching things, which is awesome. And the key for me is I like to dig down in our YouTube analytics and really look at what's happening, right? So you can see views. So for example, on a weekday morning prayer, we would have maybe 3 or 4 people. Well, last Friday we had 170 views.
Wow.
But the cool thing is when you dig down, there's a number called concurrent views. And these are people who are watching real time so they're literally praying with us. And that number is like 45 or 50 that are praying the whole morning prayer. We post each morning prayer on our homepage, on our website, so people can actually follow along. So in the midst of this shutdown, we've gone from a group of 3 to 4 that pray morning prayer to a group of 40, 50 who are praying it live, and then 130 other people who are watching throughout the day.
Do you have a sense of, are these parishioners who are just taking on this habit because they can do it in their living room, or are these other people who have found you somehow?
All of the above. So I think it's people who are regularly coming that now can't, so that's the best way to do it. I think people right now are really needing the anchor of Christ in their life. And so prayer has now become an extremely important part. When all the false idols of the world are starting to fall apart, what's standing is Jesus. And so they're having more time to pray. But we're also looking at our demographics that are watching us. So right now, I think like 75, 80% are coming from Ohio, which is where we're based. But we're also seeing views come from Italy, and the Philippines, and India, and all across the country, that's just incredible.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So who knows what the future holds, right? We don't know how long this is going to go on. We don't know what it's going to be like. Do you have any inkling of whether or not this bigger reach will make a difference at All Saints when we're back to whatever life gets back to after this moment in the crisis?
I want to say yes. we have other layers of what's happening as well too to reach people. But I think as I was talking to my curate and some members of my vestry, I don't want to stop live streaming. Even though we go back to normal, I still want to kind of keep that up, because I've been receiving emails through our website, how people are being touched, how much it means to them. I honestly don't know what has in store, but I think knowing what has happened to us beforehand, like the gentleman I baptized who found us on YouTube and things like that, I think this can make a huge impact for the kingdom.
Yeah. Do you, so are there, one of the things in this whole series, I've been talking about church growth and learning about particular places, but also trying to learn, to figure out what's happening at All Saints that might be useful to somebody at St. Swithin's in another state. So do you have any sense of, it sounds like some of the key principles are discipleship, you're about Jesus, and you've got a clarity of 4 things.
Right.
So it's not 17 things that somebody has to absorb, it's 4.
Right.
But do you have a sense of, are there other things that you've learned either before or during this crisis that you feel that would be transferable to another church community somewhere?
Well, I always tell people, this isn't rocket science. I think sometimes we program ourselves to death in the church. But like you said, when you look at the Acts of the Apostles, number one, they're all in love with Jesus. And so everything they did flowed from that. And I'm seeing that that's the way All Saints is acting. I've been surprised at our outreach. I thought our outreach may go down because people were quarantined. We have a bin right outside our door that's sealed and locked. We're collecting food for various food pantries. It has to be emptied every day because there's so much stuff out there.
Wow.
We volunteers who are running around to bring food to the elderly or medications. It's all safe. They're leaving it on doorsteps. I have a list of 25 people who are like, can I have a directory so I can just start calling people to check in on each other? And so people are being in touch. People are having Zoom girls' night out or guys' night out or little discipleship groups or Bible study groups, and they're taking it on their own initiative. There's no programming involved. They're just being disciples. They're just doing what, we're all called to do. So I think narrowing it down to a relationship with Christ, we're a prayer book church. We don't really kind of mess around with other stuff. We're prayer book believers. Yeah. And we engage the world with our faith and love through acts of work, of mercy, and we hang out together as a church.
Do you have people in your church who are Democratic and Republican voters?
Whole gamut.
And how does that work how does that work for you?
Well, we have dialogues. We have great dialogue. But before I even got here, I think what's built into the DNA of this congregation, and probably because we're so young, and we don't have the baggage of hundreds of years of, you're sitting in this pew, I'm sitting in that pew, whatever. The parish is really deeply engaged in fellowship and love of each other. And so there's an underlying spirit of hospitality that even though we can disagree on various things, we can come together for the work of the kingdom. Right. And I think that's important.
So I know your church is very high church, sacramental. You trotted out the rose vestments last Sunday for Lent 4. Which is awesome. Do you have a sense of the kind of principles you're doing, focusing on 4 things, being Christ-centered, focusing on discipleship? That's not dependent, presumably, on being Anglo-Catholic leaning. That could work in a more low church place, or what do you think?
I think so, too. A lot of this is education. So when I got to this congregation, it was very low church. The former rector, who was the founder, and I are really close, but we're on different ends of liturgical scale.
Yes, you are.
I'm wearing rose vestments. He never wore chasuble, and he played guitar at the sanctuary. It's just a matter of education. So there's been a lot of teaching that's happened here. And I think people's faith has kind of come alive, but I wouldn't consider us high church. We don't have tunicles. We don't have, some of the stuff like that. We are Catholic in its fullest expression.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we are. And so
Well, so when were there things that were in place already when you got to All Saints that, was there a foundation that you were able to build on, or what, talk about what that was like, It sounds like it was different, liturgically anyway, maybe.
Very liturgically different. When I came to the congregation, I was having my orders received from Rome. And part of that process, the bishop asked me to come to this congregation because the former founder was a former Roman Catholic priest as well too. And I remember coming in July, and it was around July 25th. So I think one of the communion meditation hymns was Silent Night on a saxophone in July. And I thought, what am I getting myself into? But when I literally pulled in the parking lot, our greeters were almost at my car.
Yeah.
Welcome me. So warm, so caring, so compassionate. And people will say that about this congregation, that this is a very warm, hospitable congregation. That was the foundation. And as you can tell, I'm Italian. I talk with my hands. I'm an extrovert, right? So I just kind of fit right into this mold. And so I think there was a trust level that was built. And they saw also the faith that I have. And I think that's what kind of began to be very contagious.
Right.
But, I keep telling people, make the cake, make the recipe, right? Stay focused on Christ, have good liturgy, whether it's low or high, whatever. Let it be meaningful, let it flow from the prayer book, offer people a chance to come together in fellowship, and then do good works in the world, and your parish will catch on fire.
Yeah.
That's
So in this series, I end up talking, so far it's been all clergy. One of these days I'll talk to a lay leader, but I know in every church I've ever that's growing, where I've ever talked to the clergy person, it's not just about the priest, obviously.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little about what lay leadership is like at your church.
Well, so we have moved from a kind of a pastoral congregation to more of a program congregation. A lot of subcommittees have kind of began to form that are completely lay-led. Our outreach team, as I mentioned, the outreach that's happening now is completely lay-led. They will, bounce ideas off me, but they just run with it. We're just ready, as I mentioned, apostles teaching and formation is very important to us. I just met with a group of our teachers that form the children's ministry team on how can we keep our kids engaged in formation now in this quarantine. So immediately they have formed Google Classrooms. Videos are being created for every Sunday with various opportunities, various activities. And then they're setting up Zoom meetings, every other week, where teachers of the regular Sunday school classrooms can meet with parents and their children on a Zoom chat. I'll join them so people can ask questions or whatnot. But they're taking the ball and running with it. I just give them Jesus and they go for it. That's obviously right. I offer the sacraments, bang, and they just go.
So so to go back to this kind of coronavirus thing, so there's an opportunity. Your lay leaders have taken initiative and they're doing some great work. Are there ways that this time might lead to spiritual growth, to numerical? It sounds like it's leading to some numerical growth, at least in terms of connection and audience size. Are there ways that you think this time will be a benefit to the body of Christ? I don't want to minimize the suffering or anything. I don't want anyone to think that I'm ignoring the suffering and the pain that's going to happen. But as well as that, do you think there's a way that the body of Christ will be strengthened during this time?
Yeah, on Sunday I quoted Cyprian. We quote the patristics quite a bit. So I talked about Cyprian of Carthage, and he actually had a line during one of the plagues during his time, was plagues have a tendency to search our hearts and to see what is the most important. And they try our hearts into how we're loving and caring for the sick, how we're loving each other, how we're holding on to Christ. And so, yes, there's a lot of darkness in this plague of people who are suffering and losing jobs. But I'm watching the church have this revival, I think. It's because people are clinging to what is now important, which is the faith and friends and family and love and acts of love, and watching how we're taking care of each other. So I'm hopeful for the future that when we come out of this time of pestilence, we're going to be entering a promised land where the church is really more fully being church inside and outside of the walls. Right. So I have a lot of hope for what the future has in store. We're going to look different. We're going to look way at the end of this. But I think we're going to be more sleek, more nimble, and much more on fire for Jesus.
Yeah, no, I agree. I hope that happens. So is there anything else, as we're wrapping up, anything else that I should have asked about All Saints that I didn't? Anything you want to tell us about All Saints?
I think I'm pretty good. I just keep saying to people, be not afraid. Christ is with us. This is not the first time the church has been through plague. We'll make it through. But I tell my people, we're quarantined. And that comes from the Latin word meaning 40, really, right? We're in Lent. We're in our own little quarantine. I've always said to my congregation before Lent starts, you should come out of Lent a substantially different Christian than you began it.
Yeah.
So our practices during the 40 days should make us rise to new life in Christ at the end of it. And so that's what I'm seeing. And that's what I encourage parishes to do. Don't be so caught in the darkness, but look to the resurrection, look towards the future. Double down on the faith. This is not a time to run from the faith. It's time to double down on the faith.
Yeah, absolutely. And no matter how we're able to celebrate Holy Week, which is hard to even grasp, it's true that no matter what we do in the year 2020, Jesus has already offered himself for us on the cross, and the tomb is empty no matter what. Nobody's putting him back in there.
No.
And thanks be to God for that.
Right.
So I guess that's a pretty good note to end on. Thank you so much for all your time
thank
today.
you. It's fun to talk about this. It's kind of nice to feel alive again in the midst of the coronavirus.
Well, God bless you, and keep doing all your great work, and thanks for sharing.
Thanks so much, Scott. Have a good day.